Hey, this is the first podcast of me and William Satterwhite's college football
There we go. We got adding
season. It
William.
will begin every Saturday night at 10 o'clock Eastern. I hope y'all enjoy. It will be loaded to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Man, how are you?
I'm not doing too good, but I'm here.
Well, interesting day today.
It was.
Sitting there watching a little UCLA, LSU right now.
That's exactly what I'm watching as well.
This has been a good time for us to start having our, shows there at the end of the night. So what'd you think about, going to get the 900-pound elephant out of the room? How'd Bama look?
They looked unstoppable. I was really worried. Everybody has always been saying that they reload instead. They don't rebuild, they reload or whatever. But I
Right.
was really curious after seeing Ohio State kind of struggle a little bit the other night with a first-year quarterback. I was kind of worried about how they might do with a first-year quarterback, but they were firing on all cylinders. And
Well, what is it about Alabama? Because you see so many teams in the past that went on to win national championships, and and they eke by a first game against a team they should blow out, and but when Alabama comes out, they're in mid-season form. I mean, they're
you know,
7 games in the season.
I'll be honest with you. I'm not even sure if that Miami team is a team that they should have blown out the way that they blew them out. I I know preseason rankings are worthless, but they
Mm-hmm.
were number 15 for a reason. They have one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the country. They
Yeah,
have talent and speed all over the place, and Alabama just made them look like a rag
I
doll.
mean it was that was men against boys. I mean,
Yes.
every time I turned around, and there was nothing they could do. Anything against Alabama. I was impressed with the speed that Alabama had on defense. I mean, if that defense is that good with that kind of speed and that offense, they're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah.
I know
Like I
it's
said,
the first game
it's
of the season.
the jury can still be out on what Miami exactly is, but like I said, Miami's not a MAC school. Miami's not a Sun Belt school. They're not
Right.
a they're a high they're a upper now, as I say this, I realize it might not actually be saying it too much after this weekend. They're an upper echelon ACC team, and Alabama made them look like they were a MAC or a Sun Belt team.
Oh yeah. I mean, they made them look. I mean, that was not the Miami I grew up with at all.
No.
And I keep hearing every year the U's going to be back. The U's going to be back, but and they put together some good recruiting classes, so I thought that, I figured Alabama would win. I didn't think with everything Alabama lost on offense, I mean, that receiving core, those three starters on the offensive line, a first-round draft pick quarterback, Najee. I mean, you lost three players in the top five in Heisman. So, I expected it to be them to struggle a little bit, but man, they didn't. I mean, at all. Um, that uh, uh, Penn State and
That was a
God,
game that was the first game of the day that I watched, and
right? Yeah, I did too.
it's kind of funny. You've been saying the last couple of times we've gotten together that you think that there's room for
Hey, this is
for
the
teams
first
to win
podcast of me
those
and William, the
seven
General
to seven to
Satterwhite
seven,
for college
10 to
football
7,
season.
14 to
Hope y'all
7,
enjoy. Please remember to
Mm-hmm.
14 to
subscribe,
10
like,
type
and share.
games. That was a 14 to 10. I forget what was the actual final score. I think was it 21 to 7? Was it 21 to 14, or what was the final score?
Uh, if you hadn't told me, I could have answered it, but it was like that. And case in point, just a few minutes ago, I mean, watching Georgia Clemson, I thought I was watching 1979 or 1980 George Rogers with Horsey Walker. I mean,
Yeah, well,
that type of defense.
unfortunately, I didn't get to watch that one because I was watching another Georgia team disappoint me. But I was following it along on the online, and yeah, that was 10-3. And from what I can gather, it wasn't that it was just bad offense. It was just that the defenses were just swarming, and they were just.
Man, they were laying the lumber out there. I mean, those boys were hitting. And I had read coming in this season, they said that Dabo Swinney, he probably had the best defensive line in years up there on that team. And that's where it starts right there. I mean, if you can control it right there, you're going to control the game. So I was, and then Auburn, blew out their team. So I was really didn't think anything about that. Let's see, what other games? Like we had a lot of SEC. I don't want to keep our
Well,
show
the Ohio State Minnesota game. That was I think Ohio State showed me in that game that they're going to be what we expected them to be. Like I said, they
Yeah,
started off a little bit dicey because, like I said, I think it was the quarterback just having some jitters, first time starting
yeah,
jitters. But
I
they
agree with
came
that.
out and they showed out, and I think that the top of that Big Ten, I think the Big Ten East. Maybe I'm giving Michigan. Maybe I'm giving I've been a Harbaugh defender. Maybe I'm giving them a little bit too much credit. I think that Michigan might be better than what a lot of people are thinking, and that will be a tough 3-team race because it's obviously not going to be Indiana. So it's going to be the usual suspects at the top, and maybe Penn State or Michigan can.
Phone call came in. I got cut off right there for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, could very well be right on that.
Now let me ask you this: did you catch any of the Oklahoma game?
They could be in some serious trouble.
Well, I wonder if because I saw the score at halftime because when Penn State because I do tend to like a little bit of offense with my football, and when Penn State and Wisconsin were kind of really snobber knocker in it in the first half of their game, I said, Oklahoma, I can always count on Oklahoma to do some scoring. So I looked at the halftime score, and I think at halftime, I think it was 37-3 or something like that, or 37-13. It was a pretty big spread. And I said,
Yeah.
well, you know what? It's Tulane. Tulane's decent, but they're not too much. So I'll just stick with the Wisconsin Penn State. But yeah, when I turned back and I saw the final score was 40-30. Was it 40-33 or 40-37?
40-37.
Yeah, I
40.
I saw that final score and I was just like, wow. And now is that going to be a situation where we where because like I said, Oklahoma, like I said, at halftime, Oklahoma had 30. They had a 37. Like I said, I think it was 37-13. So the game was pretty much in hand, and I guess maybe I didn't see it, so I don't know. I don't know if they just let their feet off of the gas pedal and they let Tulane because Tulane is one of those decent AAC teams that if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And I wonder if Oklahoma, just like I said, they gave them an inch and they took that mile, or if Oklahoma does legitimately have some issues on the defensive side of the ball that they need to get patched through.
Well, I think you just answered your own question because every year they have some kind of defensive questions on that side of the ball, and I couldn't understand for 20 years that Stoops was their defensive genius, and he couldn't put together a top 10 defense. I mean, they were giving up.
Well, it was a totally different world back then. But you remember he had it when he had Brent Venables with him, and we saw what Brent Venables is. We see what he's doing with Clemson. He had a gun right there, and they had some top defenses with Brent Venables. But yeah, ever since Venables left, they have struggled on that side of the ball, and they're supposed to be good now on that side of the ball, but we just don't see it.
I could see Lincoln Riley, and I can't think of the guy's name. Who got fired, and he's coaching at the Cardinals now. But I could
Cliff
see,
Kingsbury.
I could see. I could really see Lincoln Riley having 2 8-4 seasons and being a Clint Kingsbury getting fired.
Well, that might be. Does Lincoln Riley really want to coach in the SEC? If
it goes down to this, it's going to come down to basically pick your poison. I mean, because if you get some kind of alliance, and because, of course, not all of them are going to get together, but if they pick out some kind of alliance with the Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12, and you end up forcing Notre Dame in there, and you've got a Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Clemson, Florida State, trying to think of another team out of the Big
Miami,
12.
or do we really want to say Miami?
Not right now, not until Miami comes back. I mean, because you got to think it's been 20 years basically since Miami's been down.
It has been a long time.
After Coker won that national championship and they played again, and then I think Coker went like 8-4, and then I think he finished 7-5, and they fired him, and that's been it. I mean, the U's never come back. So,
well, what I thought that I'm not the Miami fan that I used to be back before they joined the ACC. Because Miami used to be one of those teams that obviously I'm a Georgia Tech fan. They're my number one, but when Miami was in the Big East, I used to root for Miami. I used to like to see them play FSU and all that, and I used to like the swagger and everything. But
I like Miami.
except for
Back in the day.
when they played that Sugar Bowl against that Bama, right?
Oh man, yeah. Except for that one.
Yeah.
They played two, and I had an argument with a guy one night, and he told me I was crazy. It was in '89, and Alabama had lost the Iron Bowl, and there was number 2, but they only fell number 4, and Alabama was playing Miami, and Miami was undefeated, and Notre Dame was number 2. Notre Dame had a loss, and Bama was number 4. And I said, if Bama would have beaten Miami, they would have won a share of that national championship. The guy said, "Oh no, you're crazy." I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "They're Alabama." I said, "I promise you, if they would have
was that what 89?
Yeah, that was '89. Notre Dame had a loss, and Alabama had a loss. I said, "I promise you, just because of legacy or whatever, if you've got a number 4 Alabama team that beats a number 1 team in a Sugar Bowl, they're going to get a share of that national championship."
Oh yeah. Remember that was during the time period where there was a share. It was 80, 90 we had a share. In 91 we had a split title. It was that time period.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, had it been, say, LSU that did that, they wouldn't have got that national championship. Right. But there's certain comes with the Blue Bloods that they're going to get that kind of break right there. But yeah, no, that we was actually talking about that. No, sorry, we'll get back on our games here in a minute. Do you remember when Alabama played Miami in that Sugar Bowl, and Alabama walked 11 players up to the line of scrimmage, and all 11 of them was staring? They said all 11 players, they wasn't looking at me, they were staring straight at Geno Torretta. And I think it was
he just about crapped his pants.
And I can't remember if it was Antonio London or which one it was that said they looked at him and they said there was nothing but fear in his eyes. And they said he snapped the ball, and the first thing he did was just hurled it to the
I
sideline.
remember. I remember seeing that play.
Well, I got ahead of myself.
No, what
Let
I
me
was
tell you
going
the
to
story.
say is about Miami. I like I said, I don't follow that program as much as I used to back in the day before they became a rival. But I remember when Al Golden got fired. I remember the exact moment that he got fired was it took a couple of days obviously because they just don't fire you during the game. But it was when Clemson was putting. I think Clemson beat them like they put a Clemson put up. I
It
want to
was
say it might have been.
merciful.
I want to say it was like an 80 something to 80 to nothing or something. It was something
It was bad.
outrageous.
Yeah.
And I said right then and there, he's going to get fired. But if you look at where Al Golden had, and this is again, this is from an outsider looking into the program. So like I said, I don't know all the ins and outs of the program, and maybe he was pissing off some people on the inside of the pro. Maybe he had pissed off some big time Miami people or something. But I was looking at it then and there. I was saying if you take into account where Golden has that program at that point, and then you look at where Clemson was as a program at that point, that was an overreaction that I think might have stunted the growth of what Miami could have been
Yeah, because he
from
was
that point
beginning to
forward.
have some plug this thing back up. Some yeah, I think he was beginning to move them. But let me take this. So I wanted to tell you that story. It's so funny. That defense they put in, I think they called it cover zero or something like
Hmm.
that. But they did not put that defense in the day before the game. They never practiced it or anything. And they said they called it. And they said when they called it, and the player, Antonio Langham, McCann, all of them, they was just jumping up and down. They said, talking about, Coach called it, talking about Oliver called it. So they walked up there and they seen fear in Toretta's eyes. Now, Toretta threw that incomplete pass. So he walks up to the line again, gets up under there. All 11 players walk up the line of scrimmage and they're just staring at him. So he said he called a timeout. And he went over there to the sidelines and he got on the phones and he called upstairs. He said, "What are they doing?" And the offensive coaches said, "We don't know." He said, "Just give us a couple of series and we'll figure it out." And he said, "Hell, the game's going to be over in a couple of series."
Yeah,
That
that's
was
not what you want. You don't want. That's not what you want to hear your coaches say.
no, that's not what you were coach say. Coach, we don't know. We don't know what they're doing. I mean, but in all my years of watching football, I've never seen them walk 11 people up to the line like that.
I've seen it on a couple of occasions. You obviously wouldn't see it now because the quarterbacks are. You got to think back in those days, quarterbacks didn't have the freedom that they have now,
Right.
and but when you do that nowadays, the quarterback will check into a quick. You got to think back then they didn't even have quick. They didn't have quick passing plays. Miami was a downfield, let the play
Right. They
develop,
was a
pro style
vertical
passing
thing.
team.
And I heard a funny story too. They was talking about Langham, and God, I love Langham. He's such a I don't know if you ever heard him talk. So he's such a like a happy-go-lucky, laid-back, always having fun type of guy.
Hmm.
And he played for the Browns, and Saban was the um, defensive coordinator and a secondary coach.
Well,
And
no,
they asked,
oh yeah, that was under Belichick. Yeah.
yeah, and they asked Langham about playing for Saban, and they said, and they was asking him about his outbreaks, and Langham started laughing, and he said, "The outbreaks you see on the sideline today are nothing like it was then." He said, "We wanted to fight him every day after practice." I was kind of disappointed in North Carolina. I thought they was going to make a step.
You know what?
To,
I this is I was disappointed in them, but this is one thing that I really hate. I hated after that game was played, everybody calling it an upset. North Carolina has they probably do have the best quarterback in the ACC, but
I
they
didn't see
lost.
it as an upset.
Yeah, they lost so much talent that I think Virginia Tech might actually be the best team out of the ACC Coastal.
Yeah.
I mean, if that quarterback is as good as he showed against North Carolina, there's no reason why Virginia Tech couldn't be up there. I mean, people were latched on to Miami and North Carolina just because they did the most last year, but both of those teams lost enough to where, and there wasn't people last year was such a funky year.
Yeah.
That I don't think you can put any. Like I was noticing that Penn State, they talked about Penn State being 4-5 last year, and Penn State's not a 4-5 football team. That wasn't a 4-5 football
I
team.
don't really think any coach should have gotten fired last year because I think that was unfair to fire the coaches last year. I mean, how can you go out there when some games you're missing 35 players off your team?
I think the only coaches that got fired, the only coaches who should have got fired last year are coaches who probably should have gotten fired the year before, but it was like with a guy like Kevin Sumlin, it was probably too early, but everybody pretty much knew at that point that he was not the solution. So yeah, you shouldn't have gotten judged off of last year.
I'll tell you what got Malzahn fired. I believe he would have gotten one more year, but I tell you what got him fired is when they beat Texas A&M, which was not a good team, and he went in there and he was dancing, and he said, 6-4 ain't that bad, and there your crosstown rivalry is fixing to win another national championship, and you're saying 6-4 ain't that bad. That's what got him to me.
Yep. But even with Malzahn, like I said, he had that one big year where they beat Georgia and Alabama, but still ended up losing the SEC championship game and then losing the bowl game. So even that one big year turned into a dud.
You think about his best year overall. That was his first.
Mm-hmm.
And from ever since that it went down because he went 13-0, won the SEC, played for the national championship, and had they not, I hate it because just like Lou Holtz always said, the prevent defense prevents you from winning. I mean, Florida State got the ball a minute and 27 seconds and like 80 yards to go, and they went in a prevent defense and let Jameis Winston set his feet. And when you let a quarterback like that set their feet and look downfield, I mean, it's a wrap.
Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, when you think about it, I mean, at the time, Florida State looked like a little dynasty in the making. But when you really think about it in hindsight, Auburn should have won. Auburn fans are probably kicking themselves that they didn't win that game because then you look at the fact that almost that exact same Florida State team goes back the next year and gets embarrassed by Oregon in the playoffs.
And then I think was it the year after that, or no, maybe another year after that. It's when they played Alabama and Alabama 24-3, and they finished up like 3-8.
That was the year. That was
16, 17.
Yeah, it was a couple of years after. Because they had the year. They had the year. The year after the playoff season was the year that they had They had Golston was the quarterback, the transfer from Notre Dame, and then they had a decent year that year. And then the year after that, I believe, when Golson was gone, is when they had the issues with that I want to say that was the Bama year where Alabama basically just ruined their season because the quarterback they had the Ricky, I think his name was Ricky Francois.
He got hurt at halftime.
He got hurt. And then they had to bring in Blackman, who was like the skinniest guy I've ever seen on a college football field.
Oh, God.
And he was obviously not ready to play. And then, they still went like 5. They still ended up going 6-6, I believe, because that was when they had to reschedule a game for the Hurricane in order to get that 6 win.
And I think Jimbo had already left.
He had left. Jimbo left, and because the the interim coach ended up coaching that sixth game.
And that might have been Randy Shannon too.
I don't think it was Randy Shannon. I want to say it was it was a black guy. I want to say it was an offensive coach.
You know what? It was not Randy Shannon, because Randy Shannon, after he got fired at Miami, he came back and then he was an interim coach for a game after when somebody got fired, and he coached in a bowl game, if I remember that right.
I want to say it might have been Mike Gold. No, was it? No, it wouldn't have been Mike Golden. Al Golden. I do remember. I do remember what you're talking. Yeah, Randy Shannon did serve as an interim coach in a bowl game for somebody. I don't remember who it was.
I wanted to write something about that Alabama or that Auburn Florida State game. I don't know if you remember this, but the thing that changed that game, there was about 3 minutes to go before half, and Auburn was up 21-3, and Jimbo pulled a fake punt on like his own 22-yard line and got a first down and kept the ball and went down and scored and made it 21-10. He don't pull that off. Auburn goes in and they're up 28-3.
Yep.
And that game's over. And sitting there watching this right here, we was talking about the other day about who we thought the worst coach in the SEC was, and he's it's ain't looking good right now.
Ed Orgeron is not disappointing, and let me ask you this: what do you think about these? Would this be one of the most impressive games of the weekend if UCLA? I mean, it's an 11-point game right now. If UCLA holds on to beat
and
LSU,
they're getting the ball back.
Yeah, if they hold on to beat LSU pretty impressively, UCLA, with the way that they finished last, I mean, even though, like I said, it doesn't. I mean, it's a lot of reasons why that season doesn't matter. Chip Kelly may be on to something now.
I mean, if he win, this will be a signature win to me. I mean, beating an SEC team ranked 15, 2 years away from SEC championship. And
well, I think it would. I think it definitely would.
And
I think.
Go ahead.
I was about to say, because I thought, did they beat USC last year?
I can't even remember.
No, they did not. They did not beat you. It was a close. That's what I remember. It was a very close game. It was a 5-point game. But yeah, they've got this. So this would be his signature victory right here.
I mean, that could really be something, that puts him out there. I guess did you see how the Mississippi State game ended?
I did not see it, but I heard it. Louisiana Tech correct? Did Louisiana Tech not have like a big lead in that game?
They were up. Yeah, they were up. I can't remember what the score was because I was going back and forth. But they get the ball and driving down the field, and they got the ball at like the 35, 36-yard line. There was like a minute left.
And they settled for a long field goal, and that ended up getting blocked.
Runs the ball up the middle 3 straight times and tries a 50-yard field goal. Why? I mean, that's a long field goal for an NFL kicker. Why are you not going to get that kid closer? I mean,
because you're Skip Holtz. Because you're Skip Holtz.
Good point. I mean, his daddy wouldn't have done that.
Well, his daddy his daddy would have never been in a position where he would have been playing a team like Mississippi State with a team like Louisiana Tech. And if he was, he would have had a kicker who could kick a 60-yard field goal.
And he also, when you looked at Holtz when he was the underdog, he also always had some kind of play that he was going to pull to try to, get a score, get him in position to win a game. I mean, there wasn't many like Holtz. But a lot of people didn't like him. I was a fan of Lou Holtz.
Mm-hmm. I thought I liked him for he had a very short he had a very short shelf life. He could outwear his welcome, and it didn't take him long to outwear his welcome.
Yeah, I liked him because he had a very self-deprecating humor.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't seem like he took himself too serious.
You know what is funny? I remember when him and Mark May were on ESPN, the little halftime show.
I love them.
And I used to always think that, that's just Lou Holtz. He's just old and senile at this point. He's probably just old and senile at this point. But I was saying that 20 years ago, and it's still it's 20 years later, and he's still kicking.
He said that back when Alabama lost to Auburn in the kick six, he said that Alabama deserved to be in the national championship game. And everybody was like, what? They didn't even win the SEC title. He goes, but they played Auburn on a neutral field and was tied for 59 minutes and 59 seconds during the game before they lost. And everybody was just looking at him like he has lost his mind.
But you know what? That's actually, honestly, that's probably one of the most sanest things he said in the past 15 years.
Well, I mean, but Auburn won the SEC championship. Alabama didn't win the division.
What happened in 2011?
Yeah, but in 2011, you didn't have Florida State in there that was undefeated. In 2011, it was coming down between a one-loss Alabama team and a one-loss Oklahoma State team.
And that one-loss Oklahoma State team had
But what I probably didn't explain that right. What Holt's argument is Alabama should have been in the championship game over Auburn. After Auburn, I'm sorry, I didn't explain that well enough. So his argument was Alabama should play for the national championship over Auburn, who Auburn had just beat them and won the SEC championship. That's what Holt's argument was.
Oh no, okay, yeah, that's a totally different. That's insane.
Now, one of the funny stories I've heard with Holtz was they said he was I think it was a 68 or 69. They was playing. He was a defense coordinator for Ohio State, and they was playing USC, and right before half, O.J. Simpson took a tall sweep and went 80 yards for a touchdown. And Holtz come out of the press box, and they said Woody Hayes grabbed him by the throat and said, why the hell did he go 80 yards for a touchdown? Holtz said, Coach, that's all he needed. If he needed 99, he'd have went 99.
No, that's good, Lou Holtz.
He made a statement one time too back when he got the job in South Carolina. They was asking about his depth, and he said, we couldn't even get on the ark. We don't have two of anything.
That's what I will say about him and Steve Spurrier, because I guess you gotta have to put them both together. That was one of the biggest rebuilding jobs that has happened, and I mean, obviously nothing can touch Kansas State. What Bill Snyder did with Kansas State, and
I'm sorry, go ahead, and then you finish.
And David Cutcliffe at Duke, even though it's looking like it's going to end pretty badly for him there, that's right up there. But aside from those two, that's arguably doing that in the SEC. That is one of the biggest rebuilding jobs ever. Well,
let me say a few things. South Carolina had some, tradition before, won some games, and Heisman Trophy winners. Duke had actually won some ACC championships with Spurrier. But to me,
They won ACC championships when the ACC wasn't
Florida State, but
right.
yeah, but yeah, I'll still give him credit. But to me, what Bill Snyder did
Oh yeah,
at Kansas
that is
State is impressive to me, almost as what Saban did at Alabama, because there's nothing in Manhattan, Kansas. This is a 3-hour bus ride to get
well.
to the
You have to
campus.
realize, I'm probably going to get this number wrong, but I want to say this is the stat that I have still seen relatively recently, and that it hasn't. I'm sure it hasn't changed much. Even with all the success that Bill Snyder had at Kansas State, I want to say Kansas State is still the all-time losingest Power Five football program.
Oh, there's
All
no doubt in
time.
my mind that, because when I was a kid, before I think Snyder's first season there was in '89. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was '89, and he set out 2 or 3 years and came back, and then was there another 10 or 11 years. But I remember when I was a kid, and when I first started keeping up with it in the '80s, every year you'd look at Kansas's record: 0-11, 0-11, 0-10-1, 1-10, 0-10-1. They never, in they never. They were not even competitive. And for that guy to get close to winning a national championship twice, it was just amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
that guy is just phenomenal, man. And and if he'd have been at a major school, he might have been a complete flop. Because some guys are great at small schools,
Yeah,
and they go
he had to go to a no, okay, maybe not a Kansas, like I said, because Kansas State was so far down when he went there. There was almost nowhere to go but to go up.
right.
But he had to go. I kind of look at him as kind of like Matt Campbell at Iowa State, even though Iowa State isn't that bad, wasn't that bad before him. You can't, I don't think, like, people are talking about Matt Campbell going to a Michigan or Nebraska if those jobs become open. I don't think he would have. I'm not sure he would have the same success because there's something to going to a place where you can actually grow into being a coach, and you can
Right.
actually
Yeah.
grow into the job.
Exactly right. Because a case in point here. I got two of them actually. First one was Curly Hallman. When he was at Southern Miss, man, he was upsetting teams.
Hmm.
Upsetting Alabama. He gets the LSU job, and what happens? It didn't take him long to get fired. Jerry DiNardo takes over at Vanderbilt. He
Has
wins like,
Vanderbilt cooking?
yeah, he won. I think he went 4-7, 5-6, and 4-7, or 5-6, 4. But anyway, that's like going 10-2 at
Hmm.
in other schools, and they were competitive playing, and so he goes to LSU, and what happens? I've just seen so many coaches that did great at these smaller schools, and they get up there in one of these major universities, and they, for whatever reason, they flop. I don't know if they can't handle the pressure. They can't handle the.
Like and the jury's still out on whether Scott Frost is actually a good coach or not. But I think he's a good example of that. He had things rolling at UCF, and he goes to Nebraska, and he can't. It's not the same. It's just not the same.
But I've said it, and I know on several conversations, and I still believe it. They gonna have to go back and get somebody, go in there and get those 6 huge white offensive linemen, and that speedy 4-2-4 receiver, and a smart quarterback, a glorified guard, 2 great running backs, and run the option, and go back to Nebraska football.
I mean, it's. I've mentioned his name to you before, and I'll say it again. Brian Bohannon, head coach at Kennesaw State University. Keep an eye out on that name. He is going to make some Power Five school look like a genius when they eventually hire him to run their program and to be the next school that runs the triple option.
I mean, do you know, you really made that if you get the right coach in there, I mean, because you think about it, like I said, you got all you got to do is get 6, corn-fed offensive linemen up there,
That's
two
all you
great
have to do.
tailbacks, a smart quarterback who can throw a little bit, and one speedy receiver. Now you're only going to get 4 catches a game. Okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
it. But out of those 4 catches,
Well,
you're
you
going to
know
get.
what? You having watched Georgia Tech over the years when we were running a triple option, you really don't even need a speedy. I mean, yeah, obviously you want to have the biggest,
Right.
speediest,
Yeah.
fastest receiver. You would need a big receiver more than you need a speedy receiver, because the big receiver, you just throw that ball. You take a 6'4", 6'5" guy and you throw that deep ball up there to him, and as long as he gets back there, you got that 6'4", 6'5" guy going up against a 5'9", 5'10" cornerback. That's what you need with those jump balls.
Well, you're right too, because you may not have to have that speedy guy, because when you're running the ball, and those safeties and those defensive backs start creeping up the line, and he goes in like blocking releases, he's wide open. I mean, just going down
That's
the
it.
sideline. So you may only get 3 catches a game, but they're
Mm-hmm.
going to be 3 70-yard strikes for touchdown passes.
Yes. And now where you do need your speedy guys in, and it depends on whether you're running the wishbone or the flexbone. Where you need your
Yeah.
speedy guys at is on those is in the slot, those slot
See,
backs.
and I used to love the wishbone, I guess, because Alabama ran when I was coming up. But to me, the flex bone is my favorite. When you got those 2 wings over there of those 2 tight ends, there's so many things you can do with that right there. I
And you
mean,
see, and that's where you win. That's where it gives you an edge in the modern day of recruiting, is because, like I said, you can get yourself. While all the other programs, the big time programs, are going after that 6'1", Dante Smith style wide receiver who lightning quick, can catch and everything. You get yourself that like I said, that 6'5", maybe a tweener. Like Darren Waller is the best tight end in the NFL. He was a wide receiver. He was a wide receiver at Georgia Tech.
yeah,
You get yourself a 6'5" guy, like I said, guy who can run, but he doesn't have to be a burner. But you get him to be your wideout,
you're right.
and then you get those. You get like a 5. You get those 5'10", 5'11" guys that are lightning quick. But maybe they're not big enough to be a 4-star recruit. But they're they're big, and they're talented enough that if you teach them, okay, if you need to block, we're not going to ask you to hold a block for a long time. We're just going to ask you,
Yeah,
chop a
just
guy,
a second ago.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, you got to think. I mean, really, your biggest thing is because you can go out. I can shake a dead cat out the window and find 10 running backs that can run the ball. I mean, your biggest thing is getting you some offensive linemen, because your fullback's just a glorified guard, and you got 6, 5 linemen and 1 tight end, and you got your receiver. I mean, that's your biggest thing. A quarterback that's smart and can read that. I mean, I just think that, because like if you're playing a team like Alabama, you're keeping their offense on the field, and as
Yeah,
long as their offense on the field, they can't score. As long as
that's exactly what you got to do. Like I said, I'm telling you, it might take 5 or 10 years for it to finally happen. Brian Bohannon, that is your next great triple option college football coach.
I'm just surprised that more teams are not still running it. I just
Nobody wants to be.
they want the
the kind of
glory and stuff now.
It's the
You
kind of
know,
thing. It's the kind of thing. Being a fan of a school that did that. The reason why more schools don't do it is that it's kind of an admission to say we can't win playing real football. And you probably can't see it on the front, but I just did air quotes around that real football part.
right.
It's kind of an admission that you can't win playing real football, which I think it's bunk, but
You're
that's
gonna. I'm sorry.
I
You're
was
gonna
gonna
have to
say
have. Oh, I'm
uh,
sorry. Go ahead.
I
Didn't
was
mean to
gonna say
interrupt
that
you.
I think it's bunk, but that's unfortunately the way that people look at it.
You're gonna have a coach. I mean, not because of course, there's only one Nick Saban, but you're gonna have a coach that is the type of salesman that he is. It's gonna be able to go in there into these recruits' home and sit down and say, "Look, we can win with this football. If you buy
Hmm.
into the process and you stay with us, you stay in the weight room and you're strong, that these teams that are pretty and finesse, we're going to wear them down." Because one thing that I noticed in 2018, when Alabama was throwing the ball all over the field and just putting up all those points, Alabama was not physical. And something about when you become a finesse team, you lose your physicality.
Well, it's you nailed it 100%. You nailed it right on the head. Uh-oh, they got the
Oh,
ball back.
yeah, but they're down by 18 points with 5 minutes to go.
Yep. But you hit the nail right on the head, because you know why teams, why that spread it around style grew. It's the ideal of getting your athletes into space. Well, if you got your athletes into space, guess what? You're not being physical, because the whole ideal of getting of spreading the ball around is to not be physical, because you so basically when you're a school like Bama and you yourself are spreading the ball around, you're taking away your number one strength. Your number one strength, yeah, everybody's fast, but can you be fast and physical?
Last year, Alabama did, but I'm afraid that COVID may have a lot to do with it. Because you still had
I
non.
think it's also the fact that Nick Saban, if you saw that 2018 team and you figured out what the problem with Bama was, you better believe Nick Saban was watching that team and he knew what the problem was.
Let me tell you when I knew exactly that Houston, we got a problem, is when we played Duke out there in Atlanta, and I forgot that boy's name, that nose guard. But Alabama could not block him. I mean, 3 players could not block him, and he was in the backfield, busting up every play, and it was like 13-3 at half. And I
Hmm.
was like, and I'm used to Alabama lining up and blowing you 5 yards off the ball, and I'm watching them, and they can't move Duke off the line of scrimmage. I was like, we got a problem because, like I said, my thing growing up Alabama football, we line up and put a hat on a hat, and we just, take teams' manhood away from them, and that's the problem. We lost our physicality.
And you want to know something? You mentioned, it's a matter of fact, you mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation we were talking about Oklahoma. Now, like I said, Nick Saban at Alabama has figured out that that's a problem, and he had to recalibrate his team to be more physical. That's what I don't think Mike Stoops, well, not Mike. Well, Mike Stoops was
Bob,
a culprit there. That's what I think Bob Stoops never figured out at Oklahoma, and Lincoln Riley, from his background, he's never going to figure it out, because he doesn't come from that background to begin with. But I think that's why Oklahoma continues to have the problems that they have on defense, is that they've gone away from that fit. When they went to the air raid and they went to that style more, they lost that physicality that they had initially under Bob Stoops, and now they can't get it back.
I just, it's just, I mean, when they talked about teams like, and it was such a myth, about how Florida and the Miami teams, they were these teams throwing it 80 times a game. They didn't throw it 80 times a game. They ran balanced offenses.
Oh
They
yeah.
were 50% rush, 50% pass. They were not somebody who was throwing the ball all over the field. I mean, like they put it out, because a lot of teams, then were in the SEC was running the ball 70 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
The
Well, it
scoring
was
was
a
always
different.
very balanced.
It was a different. What Miami and then Florida brought to the game was a different. It was still it was a balanced offense, but it just gave you the impression that it was more pass heavy because they weren't lining up in the I formation all the time.
Right.
They were single back, spread it out, three receivers, one tight end, two tight
Yes.
ends, ace formation, and they were running sophisticated pass routes. It used to be the pass route. Yeah, teams were still passing the ball, but they were just, go dink and dunking just to get the ball
Yeah.
down the field.
Yeah. And a lot of them too. When Stallings was there, and the things that they did, and I can't remember the Bryant years, but I know when Stallings was there and he went to old school, he didn't like the short passes. He threw down the field, and
Mm-hmm.
it was going to be incomplete or it was going to be a big game, and that's why Alabama, they hardly had great passing numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we was talking about that Sugar Bowl against Miami, Jay Barker was 4 of 13 for 18 yards and 2 interceptions. I mean, can you imagine what the score would be today if you had a quarterback that completed 4 passes for 18 yards and 2 interceptions, and you tell me they won 34-13?
You would not have that. You would not have that game. No.
I mean, and friend just talked the other day. You said you like your offenses, and I do too. But I missed the days of the. I mean, a couple of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, one of the best games I watched was when Ole Miss and LSU played, and I think maybe Ole Miss LSU kicked field goal late in the game. The game was 10-7. I mean, I love those games.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
I love them.
like I said, I didn't get a chance to watch it today, but at that Georgia Clemson game,
Boy, that was a
everything.
that was a 12-round fight.
And you see, I think the reason, like I said, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate a game like that, but I think the reason why a lot of other people don't like them is because, JT Daniels is a good quarterback. He's going to be a great quarterback with Georgia. He showed it
Yeah.
last year, and against this little run of 11 games that they're about to have before they get to Bama in the SEC championship game. Well, Florida might give them a run, but Florida and Auburn might give them a run. But for the most part, they're gonna have a clean stretch.
I can
He's gonna.
appreciate those games like that, those hard-nosed games, as long as it's not sloppy, turning the ball over, block punts and stuff like that. But when it's those lined up, just physical games. Like one of my favorite games I remember was when and I talked about the other day when LSU got that call, but it was 20-13 in overtime. But I remember LSU held the ball for like 9 minutes in the third quarter and just
Mm-hmm.
and got a field goal out of it. I mean, I used to love football like that. I don't know if you remember this. I think it wasn't a. I think it was the game that got. It may have got Michigan State in the playoffs that year, but they
Michigan
were
State at
playing.
Iowa.
Yeah, and Michigan State had a 22 play drive, and I thought, how it's 100-yard field, so you know, for 20. How did you get 22 plays out of a 100-yard field?
As a Georgia Tech fan, I can tell you how. It's called 3 yards on first down, 3 yards on second down, 3 yards on third down, 1 yard on fourth down. Wash, rinse, and repeat. And then maybe you lose a yard on second down, but then you get 3 more yards on fourth down. I saw plenty of those. I've seen plenty of those type of drives, and he did it at Navy too. He did Navy in a bowl
Oh
game.
yeah.
I want to say they were playing New Mexico. I want to say it was New Mexico. They were playing in a bowl game one year. It was like 2004, 2005. I want to say they literally held the ball for an entire quarter. Like they got the third quarter kickoff, and they
Yeah.
literally held the ball for the entire drive, for the entire quarter.
Wow. I don't think I've ever seen that before. That, wow, the whole quarter. Speaking of Sour Day, so, what did you think about Chan Gailey?
I hated them.
You didn't like Chan? Yeah, I always
No,
had a lot of respect for Chan.
you know what? I don't know because you're going through because you got his y'all you well now you're a Bama fan, but you know his Patrick Nix, his son, is at Auburn right now,
Right.
and Patrick Nix was the offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech under Chan Gailey.
Really?
Yeah, and whether it was Chan Gailey or Patrick Nix, what's kind of funny. People always talk about Calvin Johnson, and they always look at his college stats, and they always say, "Wow, he was able to do that in a triple option offense." Calvin Johnson didn't play in a triple option offense. He played under Chan Gailey,
Right.
but that offense it was it was a triple option offense without the option and without all the fun that the option brought. It was it
Okay.
was almost it was like if you look at because we had the number one rusher in the ACC like 3 or 4 years in a row. I think it might have been 5 years in a row because that was all we could consistently do was run the ball. We ran the ball well. We threw the ball up the pot. We threw it up to Calvin Johnson and let Calvin jump up and catch the ball. But that was it. Reggie Ball, who was the quarterback back then, had a great freshman year. Had a because he was a freshman, so the mistakes that he made, you accept the mistakes.
Right.
Because he's a freshman, so you accept them. I saw him over the course of 4 years literally get worse year after year after year. That should not happen with a 4-year starting quarterback.
No, you're right. I just I always liked Chan, but I just always thought he was not a great head coach.
He was not a good. You know what Chan Gailey? He was not a good college football. He was not a good college head coach. He was a great. He would have been a great, and I think he was. He was a great NFL. He's a great play caller because he's a darn good play caller.
See, I'm not impressed with him at that because I remember when they hired him after Barry Switzer with the Cowboys, and I'm trying to remember exactly which one he tried to install, but he tried to, and the Cowboys were aging, but they still had talent, and he tried to change the whole offense from a vertical passing game, I think, to a West Coast offense with them.
Mm-hmm.
And he got fired after 2 years. Now, I remember him, I think where his claim to fame is as a play caller, and he still may be good
Pittsburgh.
because I've not kept up with him, and Denver, because, he was the play caller when Elway was there in the 80s.
I didn't know that.
Now, I'm pretty sure, and I could have it wrong, but I think he was the offensive coordinator there with Elway. But I'd have to go back and double check because, at my age, my memories start to fade.
You know what?
So,
Actually, that does sound. I think that does sound because I think he is a. I think he is a Dan Reeves guy.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm almost certain because because I was thinking that after Reeves got fired, he went and took that job with the Birmingham Fire or something like that. And I think he actually went back and coached with Reeves again for a while. Is this is Kelly? Is this his third year at UCLA?
Yes.
Did he express any interest, or did Tennessee make a push at him a couple years ago? Because man, that would have been my first guy to went after.
You
That's
know
the
what?
beginning.
I don't know
That's
if
the
you're
beginning of
I
the
don't
end.
know if you know him, the Clay Travis.
Yeah.
I want to say Clay Travis tried to say that he was a candidate at Tennessee, but I don't think anybody at Tennessee ever actually went to him.
I don't know if you just seen the look, but that was the handwriting on the wall for Orgeron. The look he just had on his face, because you got to think he just lost.
I'm looking at him right now. They just had a long pad on his face. He just
Because
look at just get. All
Because think
right.
about this, he's got to play. He's not only does he have to play Alabama, he's got to play Texas A&M. He's got to play Florida out of the East. I don't remember who his other team is out of the East. He's got to play.
I think that it is. I think it might be Tennessee, because I want to say Tennessee gets two of the big boys.
Um, he's got to play. He's going to have to play much improved, which I think will be an improved Ole Miss team. He's got to play A&M. I mean, you could be looking at a 7-5 season there. I mean,
Oh, he's got to play. Kentucky is the other team that they draw. You know, Kentucky.
he could very well lose that game, because Stoops has that team.
You know, it's funny. I think we've done like a top coaches in the SEC at least two of the times that we've talked. I don't think either one of us has mentioned Mike's. It's Mark Stoops, right?
Yes.
Mark Stoops. I don't think we've mentioned Mark Stoops, but the job
I
that he's
can't
done
believe
at
we hadn't.
Kentucky.
But yeah, I can't believe I hadn't mentioned that, because
Yeah.
I've been saying for years, why has nobody went and got this guy? A couple of years ago, when they went 10-3 and beat Penn State, I thought people would have been knocking down his door.
Well, you know what I think with these schools, like this is why I really don't understand what Oklahoma and Texas are thinking coming into the SEC, because these schools like Kentucky, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, depending on what Leach does there, Arkansas, if Pittman has it going on at Arkansas, Tennessee, if they can get. If you're one of these mid-range SEC programs,
You can beat them.
because you got to think this TV money that's coming in. Yeah, see, like I said, I don't understand what Texas and Oklahoma. You're already making money just off of your brand name.
Yeah,
You're coming into the SEC. You're just in making more money for the Kentuckys and the Ole Misses and those schools. And so that if you're Mike Stoops, or if you're Mark Stoops, my bad, if you're Mark Stoops, other than another SEC job, where else would you want to go?
I mean, why? And what I understand is when you go in there, I mean, compare some of the teams in the Big 12 as compared to your mid schools in the SEC. They're already dropping a game to an Iowa, an Iowa State or something like that every year. A team that a 3-7 team. What are you going to do when you go in there and face a 6-2 Kentucky team? I mean,
You're just you're and I think this is why the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12 were so quick to put a kibosh on this 12-team playoff, is because the SEC and Oklahoma and Texas were negotiated. They were, because the Oklahoma and Texas were both part of that 12-team playoff deal. They were their administrative their ads were part of those deals. The Big Ten and after this news came out, they were like, hold on now. The only way that a 12-team playoff, the only way that Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC makes sense for Oklahoma and Texas is if there's a playoff system in place that gives a third place SEC team just as much gravitas as a Big 12 champion.
You're going to have so many. If they get in this thing where they're talking about with 4 divisions and 16, you could have 6 SEC teams in this playoff.
If they like I said, that's why they had to say, okay, we're going to have the top 5 conference champions. So that's at least 5 playoff berths. That's at least 4 of them that can't come from the SEC. But yeah, I was looking. There were some years where the SEC gets no less than 3 teams.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can think of even a couple of years ago when Alabama came back and beat Georgia. If in a situation like this, when Kirby was campaigning with those 2 losses, he would have been in that playoff.
Georgia would have been a playoff team every year. I was looking at it. The one year that I think the SEC, the LSU, the year that LSU won the championship, and I want to say Bama and Auburn played. They were both like in the top 10, like at 9 and 10. And then Georgia was like at like 5 or 6 or something.
Mm-hmm.
That year, like I said, as it was, Auburn ended up knocking Bama out of what would have been a playoff. But I do think that if there was a 12-team playoff, the way that they had drawn it up, if that system had been in place that season, the way that Bama getting knocked down wouldn't have happened. They would have kept Bama in that position, and you would have had 4 playoff teams from the SEC.
I mean, think about 2012. 2012. You would have had Alabama, Georgia. Georgia would have been in there just when they beat them. And I think I can't remember what LSU's. You also would have had probably Texas A&M because they finished with 2 losses that year.
Yep.
And they beat Alabama, so you would have had them in there in that championship game. And I'm trying to remember some of the other records in there.
I know there was a couple of years. There was a couple of years where Bobby Petrino had Arkansas, where Arkansas was right up there.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
would have been, and the 2014 when Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they would have been up right up there.
Ole Miss finished 9-3 in the regular season, and I think they finished 9-4. I can't remember if State lost their bowl game. State did beat number 1 Auburn. State finished, I think, 10-2 in the regular season. But yeah, I mean, they're with this type of situation right here, you got a playoff team out of there. I mean, easily. I mean, there could be. I was trying to think of just a team that was tough last year or over the past few years, that finished like a 9-3 or something that, you would have had in there. Well, a couple, just case in point, back, 15, 16, Rick got fired. Those 9-3 Georgia teams and 9-3 LSU teams, they would have been playoff teams compared to some of these other ones.
Martin Richt and Les Miles will probably still have jobs at it. Well, Les Miles might not, but Martin Richt will probably still have a job if a 12-team playoff had been in place while he was at Georgia.
Mark Richt would have still had a job if there had never been a Nick Saban. There have been a lot of coaches that would still have jobs because you think about the record that Rick had. yeah, he wouldn't have been fired with that kind of success he had over those years if it wasn't for Nick Saban winning championships like that.
Nope. Especially when you consider that there's at least one. I don't hate to say it because they didn't get that championship. There's at least 1 year where Georgia would have had a championship like that. That was that 2012 or what? What year was that where Notre Dame was in the championship game?
Oh my God! If he, I understand Rick's philosophy. Alabama's defense was on their heels. They was reeling. He wanted to get it down there before they had a chance to set up and throw that fade to the end zone. It just so happened that defensive end tipped the ball. So I guess you can criticize him for it. Now, on the other hand, you call a timeout and you set up your two best plays, but you also give Alabama a chance to set their defense up. Alabama had a timeout where they could also, like in basketball, where they set up their offense and you call set your defense up. I don't fault Rick for that, because
But
like I said,
I
Alabama.
just think there's a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of. It's like the only thing you could fault Mark Richt for was not being Nick Saban. Because here's the thing: 99.9% of the coaches in that position probably do what Mark Richt did. But does Nick Saban do that?
No. Because one thing too, the way that ball was tipped and it went up in the air, even if it fell incomplete, there probably would have been 1 or 2 seconds on the clock where he would have had another shot. So I don't think it was really a bad decision on Rick's behalf to do that. I just thought, I was reading something a while back about, when they started doing first started doing the playoffs and stuff and had it lined up. And let's see, in 2008, when Alabama played Florida, Alabama was number 1, Florida was number 2. The first round of the playoffs would have been number 1 Florida versus number 4 Alabama. I mean, you imagine beating the team and have to turn around and play them right back again.
Well, it's funny when they talked about when they announced that when they revealed what the 12-team playoff was going to be. They talked about so many times where and like when they came out with the 14 playoff, they did the same thing. But you just know that if that system had been in place back then, the rankings would have worked out a different way.
Oh yeah,
They would have, even though they say that they don't do that, they would have done that.
Oh, most definitely they would have had to do that.
I
mean, like 2013, it would have been number 1 Auburn versus number 4 Alabama again.
Yep.
And that would have been amazing.
But we're at halftime of BYU beating up on Arizona. I think this is probably the last game of the night.
Yep, probably is.
Haven't had a chance to see what else. But like I said, it's been a good day of football, and
yeah, I've enjoyed this.
We'll have to do this again, I guess.
Yeah, man, let's start promoting it more and see if we can get a little following in. And I think there's a way we can start bringing on people for questions and stuff. I'm gonna see if I can get a good live stream, and y'all wouldn't mind paying a little bit of money, do that a month, and we'll see how far this goes. But yeah, I've had fun doing this, man.
Sounds good. I same here. We'll have to, like I said, we'll have to set up a time for next week's show.
All right, General. We'll talk soon.
All right.
I don't know what schedule's like during the week. Well, we started this week. Let's if you got some time, let's try to set up like something, like a little 30-minute free show, like on a Thursday or Friday, and kind of preview the upcoming game. See what we think. If you got time to do that, any.
I would say, yeah, probably Thursday. probably Thursday afternoon is good for me.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing. All right,
Unless
sounds good.
unless something pops up.
And what we'll do, I don't want to go through, 120 games. But we'll pick out the top 4 or 5 games of the, is going on that week, and we'll
That's
go with
pretty much
that.
all we got to do.
Yeah.
It sounds good to me.
All right, General. We'll talk soon.
Talk to you.
All right, buddy.
Bye. All right.